he co-founded a startup named Tech, where their main focus was on healthcare and education. He is now spending his summer in his hometown of Iloilo City, where he is currently a fellow in a product management fellowship by Product Space, while also helping students prepare for their college application. During his free time, he enjoys playing Valorant and exploring new food spots in Nashville or any city he might be in. A warm welcome to Marcus Pranga. Hi, Marcus. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so our second panelist is an incoming freshman at University of Pennsylvania. In high school, she was in the International Baccalaureate Diploma program, graduating with high honors, as well as an active member of the student body, being the production crew head of her school's dramatics guild and a member of the events committee. Outside of school, she was also the assistant executive director and a founding member of Cabanata Philippines, as well as a volunteer for Make-A-Wish Philippines. She was also previously the design associate of Girl Up Philippines and a member of her school's newspaper layout staff. In 2020, she also received recognition for Typhoon Ulysses fundraiser, which raised over 215 pesos. Everyone, a round of applause to Sarah Chan. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay, and last but not the least, our third panelist is a recent graduate of New York University, where he majored in business and technology management with a specialization in finance at the Tandon School of Engineering. He's also an incoming full-time associate consultant at RA Advisory. Santino is also an avid athlete and has played basketball and football competitively for 10 years. Please help me welcome Santino Lopez. Hi, Santino. Hi.
How's it going? Nice to see everyone.
Okay, so this panel talk will actually consist of just Q&A questions. I'll ask the questions and you guys will answer. Maybe you can follow the order. Sarah first, and then Marcus, and then Santino last, and then we'll switch up the order halfway through the questions. Okay, so for the first question, in your view, is it better to be a well-rounded student, multiple extracurriculars across different interests or topics, or a pointy student, extracurriculars all related to a certain interest or topic? Sarah, do you want to go first?
Okay, yes. So personally, I think it's really better to be a pointy student. So when I was applying to college, there's like a really common phrase that I heard a lot, and that was that colleges want a well-rounded class, not a well-rounded student. I think a lot of people hear that, but basically what that means is that, colleges would rather have students who are specialized in a particular field. And the reason for that, I think, is that when you get to college, there's like so much different clubs that the colleges want you to fill up. And the way they do this is by having students from who are interested in different things. So, there's always going to be people who have like so many different extracurriculars, but these people come like a dime a dozen, I suppose. But being like, specialized in a particular interest or field, I think it really gives you like this edge in your application because it really shows like what sets you apart. So I really do think it's like, quality over quantity when it comes to like your ECAs. And because like, these ECAs, they're supposed to like tell a story about you and like what you're interested in and who you are as a person. And I think that's really just like achieved by being a pointy student.
Marcus, you want to go next?
Same thing in high school was that I'd actually fallen into the mistake of trying to be a well-rounded student applying to colleges before. But then during my last year in high school, I realized it's much more important to have a certain spike. So let's say you're a very well-rounded student in high school, or you can actually try to rephrase some of the things that you pursued in high school into something that fits your profile. So for example, I had a economics club in high school. That doesn't really fit my profile of being a person who loves startups and tech. So I made it a business club as well. And so it fits a lot of the things that I did in extracurriculars. It's because colleges want to see that you actually have a focus you're going into. It's the same, but it's better to be a master at one thing than to be a jack of trades in everything. It's because you can be good at one thing, but you might not be good in everything. So that's a danger that most students try to fall into, especially in the Philippines, where you try to be the best in everything. Well, that's not really practical going to college applications as well.
Santino, what's your response to this question?
Sorry, I don't know he was done. I agree with both of them to a certain extent. I guess my take on that is it is important to be, pointy in a certain area that, you're passionate about and interested in. But it's also important to have those skills that could help you interact with people from, different backgrounds and those that have interests different than you. I feel that was important throughout the 4 years. So yeah, I do agree though. Being pointy is essential.
Okay, second question. Are awards from contests really important?
Okay, so personally, I really don't think they're important. That's not to say they're not important, but for me personally, I don't think awards are everything, because in my application, I actually did not join any like contests or competitions. So I had like no awards in my section. So I'm basically like proof like awards aren't everything. But I do think they are helpful because, they do show like your competence in a particular field, and it shows like, it's like proof of your hard work and dedication and everything. But that's the thing, like they're not everything, because not every like eco success can be like quantified with an award. So especially like service related. So a lot of my ecos were like service related and community related. So it was about like fundraising and such. So I think in those like aspects, like your success can be like quantified in other ways. So for example, in my case, I tried to quantify it by saying like, oh, my project reached how many people, or I spent X amount of hours every week on this project. So I think those are just like as equally meaningful as having awards, because it still shows like how dedicated you are to what you have.
I think I agree with Sarah. Sarah, awards are important, but they aren't everything to your application, because it shows that you're actually good at something, you actually dedicated time to something, but it can't really show everything that you did on your applications. For example, you're good at math, you're good at journalism, so you naturally would get those awards related to those. What if your focus is more on student council awards, which are focused on service? You can't really give awards to those. It's actually a really good talking point in your application, because in order to get those awards, you have to gain certain experiences. Let's say you won a math contest, so you had to join a math contest. So during those math contests, what was the lessons you learned during that time? What did you have to endure in order to get those awards? And it's actually a way for you to get some scholarships abroad as well. Like I know in some countries they give immediate scholarships if you win certain awards. But that's not to say that if you didn't win an award in high school, it's the end of the world.
I agree with both of you said, and that, they are important in a sense that they show that you're passionate about, things that you want to do, but they aren't the end of the world. One of the biggest things that I put in my application through my extracurriculars was what Marcus said, the lessons learned. So I feel like that's the most important portion of, entering these different extracurriculars. So yeah, I agree with both of you.
Okay, so for the third question, in my remaining years as a high school student, what can I do to improve my extracurriculars?
Okay, so for this one, I think that you should just like join ecos that are like really meaningful to you. And that's because in the application process, I think it will give you like a chance to discuss things better and like more in depth. Because I found that like even me, there was a time where like I was joining like 6 different like ecos at the same time, and I found that I was just like spreading myself too thin. And by the end of like senior year, I would like left a bunch and I was just in like 3, but I found that these were the ones that really like stuck with me. These were the ones that I really like discussed in depth during my application, and I really got to talk about like my personal growth with these ecos. And I just think that like at the same time, you shouldn't be afraid to join or try new ecos, because I think so many people don't know what they're passionate about, and that's why they don't want to join things, because they're going to be like, oh, I don't know if this is something I'm actually interested in. Well, you won't really know unless you try, because once you get there, you might end up liking it a lot more than you might know. So yeah, just keep trying out new things, and eventually you'll find something that you're passionate about and something that will help you like stick out in the application process.
Pardon, what was the question again?
In my remaining years as a high school student, what can I do to improve my extracurriculars?
Well, I like to do. Well, the thing I did was that if you have few remaining years in high school, say you have 2 years left in high school, I'd say it's important to explore what you like, but it's also important to do what you're actually good in. So, for example, you're good in mathematics. You want to pursue something at least related to that. So that'll be a good place to start your extracurriculars. It's because you want to be able to have the most impact in the thing you're pursuing, and you also want to at least gain some recognition in the thing you're pursuing to put on your application. It's because realistically, you can try to explore something you like and be actually good at it in a few months' time. But if you want to get the most bang for your buck, it's important to know what you're good at and combine it with actually what you like to pursue it.
So for me specifically, I think I picked this up more in college as opposed to in high school, but there is a website that I would recommend to all of you watching. It's called forage.com. I can put it in the chat. This is one of the many things that I recommend to, my brother who's a senior in high school now and his friends. It's a site that allows you to, do mock work for certain companies in the US and other parts of the globe. And you can put these things on your resume. One, it helps you stand out from the others who, do work at school. And that's good and all. But if you have industry experience from mock simulations that these firms provide, I feel like that could help you stand out. But also it could help you find, what you're good at and what you think would be right for you. So if you have that clear direction, then that would help you stand out, in my opinion. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Okay, let's have it to Sarah. Okay. Do you have any resources, websites, apps, etc., to help find extracurricular activities, internships, and networks? Anyone can go. Here's Sarah.
Okay, sorry, I lagged out for a bit. But
Okay.
so for me, when I started looking for opportunities, I relied on Instagram and Facebook a lot. I think that's the most accessible for like high school students. And that's because a lot of the ones that I went for were like student-led and community-based organizations. And usually I would just like look at like what are the projects like people are promoting, like like even just like DP Blast, I would look at them and be like, oh, maybe this is something I'd be interested in. And I would just like look at them. And another thing that people used, I didn't use it as much, but a lot of people I know used LinkedIn to look for professional opportunities. So sometimes people don't want to be, in service related activities. That was like my thing, but I know a lot of people wanted like internships, professional opportunities, mentorships, things like that. And LinkedIn is really helpful for that because you get to like connect with people with similar interests. So that's also a possible resource.
I'd say just in high school, what I did was that I would go to like certain Facebook pages. One of the pages I also went to the most was like the Diliman Students Club in Ateneo because they had a bunch of hackathons back then during COVID. And so I would just try to watch if they would post any online hackathons back then. But I agree, like social media is a big resource as to like finding what extracurriculars you want to pursue. If you want to do more internship, mentorship work, I suggest you email CEOs that you want to work with or founders you want to work with. Just send a cold email. Like one of the founders, I found actually one of the founders I wanted to work with. I emailed her. I just found her email by typing her name online, and I told her I wanted to work with her. Well, she said no, but there's no harm in asking and all that. Actually, I'm trying to find the website that I found it, but I'll send it the link in the chat below as soon as I found it. But just trying to like email people you want to work with, finding through social media and Reddit is also very helpful in finding things you want to work on.
I would say LinkedIn is your best friend when it comes to finding work. That's what I used, at least pre-college. Wasn't really full-time work, but it was more part-time internships at various startups and nonprofits in Manila. But even in college, it's helped me secure internships, secure a full-time job. So yeah, the earlier you start, the better.
Okay, next question. We're gonna switch up the order this time. Santino first, and then Marcus. Oh wait, Santino, Sarah, and then Marcus for last. Okay, why is leadership so important in ECs? What role does it play, and how can students demonstrate leadership potential through ECs?
I feel like, in my ECs particularly, initiative when it came to leadership, but again, that's the main point. It shows that you want to take initiative and do something that you're passionate about, which translates directly into college because, when you're at school here, it's not you go to class, you go home, you do your homework, and day's over. It's what happens outside the classroom where you apply your learnings. And so I'd say, taking leadership from early on is probably one of the most beneficial skills that you can carry with you once you get to college. And sorry, what was the second part of that question?
What role does it play, and how can students demonstrate leadership potential through ECs?
I guess it's just, doing stuff that, I know this is super cliche, but it's stuff that you're passionate about. I was passionate about fintech, so I tried my best to work with fintech startups in Manila when I was in high school. But yeah, that's probably the most cliche answer, but it's what I have.
Okay, Sarah.
Okay, so I personally think that leadership is important in ECAs because it's more about like the qualities that people associate with like leaders for me. Because I think being a leader just shows that like you're someone who is like willing to take responsibility for other people, someone who's like a team player, someone who thinks ahead, things like that. But at the same time, I really think that leadership isn't always about like having a position. So in my ECAs, I had like Kabanata. I was social media head at first, then I became associate director. But I try to focus more on like my growth from those positions in my application. And at the same time, it can also be about just like taking charge in a particular aspect or a specific role or department in that organization. So for example, I was a volunteer at Make a Wish. I was never like promoted to a higher position. I was always just a volunteer. But personally, UPenn really liked that aspect of my application because I showed how I tried to like stand out more as a volunteer. So I would like take charge during meetings. I would initiate like meetings with Wish families, things like that. I would like try to like look over logistics more than the other members. So those were like the things that like I try to do, and I try to like make that as evident as possible during my application. So even though I wasn't in like a formal like leadership role, I tried to be a leader in my own team in that way. So that's another thing you can try to do.
Well, one thing you can do is that it's not easy to immediately start your own organization in like high school wherein you become the leader. But one thing I did in high school is that, for example, if I'm part of a club or organization, I try to find projects within an organization which I can spearhead. It's because leadership isn't limited to your position, but what you can do in your position that you're in currently right now. So for example, you're part of a marketing committee in your organization. You can spearhead different marketing promotions there, in which can help boost your organization, actually help people along the way. Now, colleges just want to see that the student has initiative and is able to take charge of their own responsibilities, because in college, as Santino mentioned, it's not just you go to class and you go back home to your dorm and do homework. You actually have to learn how to collaborate with different people, work with people from different cultures, because here in the US, you have to learn how to adjust and to have empathy for your teachers at the same time as in your classmates. And you can't do that if you're not accustomed to having your own initiative and doing a bunch of stuff. Unlike in high school, wherein the teachers try to spoon feed you a bunch of different things, in college, it's up to you on what you want to do and how you're going to do it by yourself.
Okay, thanks. Next question. How important are extracurricular activities in building a strong profile for studying abroad, and what specific qualities or skills do universities look for? Are there any specific activities that can give students an edge in building a strong profile?
That's a loaded question.
Okay.
I'd say that there are two things that I look for now, being older and seeing people who are building out their applications. One would be, having the soft skills. So learning how to communicate and interact with people who have different interests, as I mentioned earlier, but also the hard skills in the sense that you need to show that you're passionate about one particular thing, and you need to show how that passion can translate to something that's relevant to serving your community in the future. Yeah, so when I was applying personally, again, I mentioned I was passionate about fintech, and I wanted to, translate that into something where it could help with sustainability and the environment. And that ended up with me working in banking last summer for like an ESG firm. There were many things that led up to that, but it's just about showing passion for those two separate verticals that ultimately help lead you to, what you want to do.
Okay, so I think that ECAs are important during the application process because it basically tells colleges like who you are outside of your academics and how you'll engage with the college community in your free time. Because I think colleges sort of expect you to continue your non-academic interests by, joining clubs and organizations in that college. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Are there any specific activities that can give students an edge in building a strong profile?
Oh, okay. So I think that colleges do tend to like service organizations a lot, but that's not to say like they're like the best necessarily. I think that it just worked in my case, but I really think that there's no specific echo which is like better than the other. What really matters is like during your application process is how you talk about them because there's so many ways to display like your interest in these echoes. Because like I said earlier, not every like there's going to be a lot of people who have like a similar like student profile to you, so you need to find something that makes you stand out. And you're not there's going to be like a lot of students who have service organizations, there's a lot of students who are like really good at like academic competitions and things like that. So it's really just about how you like appeal yourself during the application process through like your essays and how you talk about it and show your engagement. So that's what matters.
Well, from my experience, I think college application is basically a marketing game, wherein how do you market yourself to these colleges wherein they say, we want you, we need you. Because these colleges want to get students who are unique to them, and ECs are one of the ways you can promote to them. I think a lot of an underrated skill nowadays is storytelling. And so your whole application is basically a storybook. How do you tell your story to them? And your ECs are basically the plot of that storybook and college applications. That's how important they are. And building like really important extracurriculars, there's like three letters I like to memorize: impact, initiative, and potential. So first, your impact. How do you plan to impact the community wherein you plan to hold your extracurricular in? What are the numbers? What are quantities? Who are your target audiences? Next, initiative. We're able to take part, we're able to lead this organization and help it grow towards the potential it has to be. And next, what's next for organization potential? Now, you might not have the numbers that you want right now or the impact you have right now, but does it have the potential to grow in the next years, even when you're in college? And I think that's what colleges just want to see in your application.
Okay, next question. How do extracurricular activities contribute to a student's personal growth and development, and how can this be highlighted in the study abroad application?
Again, this goes back to the point I made earlier. It's more showing that you're passionate about something through your ECs. I guess in terms of growth, it's how you progress based on your skill level in that specific vertical. And this is pretty tangible for people who, let's say, are interested in CS. This can be shown through how they complete courses through websites such as Free Code Camp or Coursera. So simple things like that, I feel help highlight personal growth.
Okay, so for personal growth, personally, my applications, I try to emphasize this as much as possible in like the supplemental documents that they ask from you. So there's like the resume and there's the essays. So during my essays, I think these basically like tell a story about your interests, how essays, they basically follow like a pattern. If you were here during the earlier talk, it's basically like how you got interested in the activity, why it's personal to you, what you achieved there, and eventually like what you learned. So a good essay basically shows like self-reflection and like what makes you different from the others. And I think that's like the best way I try to display my personal growth, because in my case, my organizations, so Cabanata, I joined when I was grade 9, same as the Dramatics Guild. And I try to talk about like my progression of like how my mindset changed like as I went on, how did like and why this led to like my eventual promotion in these orgs. And I basically tried to say like, oh, like over the time I basically learned these like X skills. I got to know these people and that affected like how I am today. So these are basically like there's also like the interview. So during the interview, they really try to get to like know you. And during my interview, they asked me a lot about like my journey in the dramatic skill, especially like during the pandemic. And I had to talk a lot about like how I grew, like what are the challenges I faced, and like how did I recover from those things, and what did I do, and how did it transform like my mindset today and like my vision for the future. So those are like some things that like ECAs really help you like discover about yourself. And the main issue here is just like how to translate that into words during your application.
Well, for me, like having, ECs really help you find out who you are during that application process and what your strengths and weaknesses are. So for example, having a startup in high school, you have to talk to college students and to older people. And I was a very shy kid, and that I'm not sure what the proper term is kapal na mukha when talking to different people. It's because you want to be able to pitch your product without sounding like a nervous, kid, because you want people to invest in it. And I think during that process, you're able to find out, oh, I'm good at this, but I'm not so good at this. And you don't have to sharpen what you're bad at immediately at that time, but you have to show colleges that you're working towards your weaknesses as well. You're working towards yourself, because they don't want you to peak at one point. Colleges want you to keep growing. The trap that most people fall into is that they become stagnant. So let's say they win like a competition in high school, or they achieve something in organization, they become contented with that and don't move towards growth. Unlike with the student who hasn't achieved that much and is starting an organization, but colleges see an upward trend and in working to moving themselves better in organization as well. Colleges want to see a student who's willing to learn, willing to improve, and willing to adapt. Because if a student is great in high school, doesn't mean they'll be immediately great in college.
Okay. Next, what advice would you give to high school students who don't know what extracurriculars they're passionate about or would be good at? Anyone can go.
I can go. It's what I mentioned earlier, like just figuring out what you want by trying out different things. And I feel like the site I put in the chat helped me personally in college. I didn't have it in high school, but in college, I switched major like 3 times freshman year before I finally figured out what I actually wanted to do. And I feel like doing hands-on work in different areas and then figuring out which majors directly provided me a pathway to pursuing those careers really helped. So I'd say doing that, just being open-minded and trying out new things.
Okay, I can go next. So yeah, same thing as Santina. So just keep trying out new things, because I really think it's normal, like at this age, like we're high school, we don't always know like what are the things we're passionate about. Like it's not an easy process to get to the point where you just know what you like. So you just have to keep trying out new things, because you'll really never know what you'll end up liking. So in my case, the only thing that I knew that I liked at some point was like I like art. So I joined like how many different organizations, and I just kept like putting myself into like the creatives department. And eventually I was like, oh, like these are like causes that I'm not as passionate about. I'd rather focus my efforts in these organizations, which I did find that I was more passionate about. So I just left those and focused my skills on like the things that I really enjoyed. So I think it's really just like put yourself out there, like don't be afraid to try new things, because I think so many people are like shy to join new organizations because they're scared of like talking to people, they're scared of like working in like something outside of school. But you really should just like put yourself out there, because you're not gonna like be able to show yourself properly during the application process if you're not willing to try out new things and find something that you like. So just like try everything.
I guess you just have to start with your hobbies. So for example, in high school, I enjoyed playing video games like NBA and like CSGO. And so those two things emphasize two important things in, playing them. First is communication, and second is strategy. How do you plan to win the game? How do you plan to attack your opponent? And with those two things, I found what I enjoyed most, which is leadership and student council. I was able to use how to communicate in CSGO and how to communicate with my fellow student council members. With strategy, I was able to apply it to hackathons and startups. How do you get the best possible play into getting the best possible return in your startup? And with that, I think that can be applied to a bunch of different things. So let's say you enjoy cooking. Involves a lot of creativity and financing. How do you get the best bang for your buck when buying your ingredients? How do you manage to create delicious dishes? And so I think it's just a lot of self-reflection of what you enjoy doing and what skills are involved in those hobbies.
Okay, thanks. And as a follow-up question, what can you do if you realize your intended major late, which is very different from the area of focus of the extracurriculars that you've already established? Anyone can answer this.
Wait, sorry, could you
I
repeat the question?
Okay, so
I
what
didn't
can
hear
you
you
do
either.
if you realize your intended major late, which is very different from the extracurriculars that you've already established? So, for example, in high school, we're more on STEM, but then you realize in your senior year in high school, oh, my bad, I want to switch majors, something like that.
I don't think it matters that much, honestly, in college. Like once you get in and you find out that it's not what you want to do, you have 4 years to figure out, you know, the path you want to go down. So just don't overthink it. Yeah. I switched major 3 times. I know one of my friends switched majors 6 times. He's now going into med school. So yeah, it's not a big deal if your things in high school don't align with what you want to do in college. You'll figure that out as you go.
I'd give like very realistic advice at this point. So in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I went to college. I know I wanted to do something in econ or in comp sci. And so I looked at all my extracurriculars and I said, oh, most of my ECs align with comp sci. So I'm going to apply as a comp sci major and switch as to whatever I want when I get into college. But the danger is that you have to check with the college is that, are you able to switch majors once you get into that college? Most of the colleges I applied to, I knew that I could switch from comp sci to whatever major I wanted to once I get into the college I applied to. I think that's very practical advice. So let's say you're in bio, you're doing a bunch of bio stuff in high school, and you realize, oh, I want to become an English major. Just apply as a bio major with your bio ECs and switch as an English major later on. Because you're not going to switch your whole entire ECs in like 12 months' time when applying to colleges. Well, yeah, that can be possible, but it's going to be very hard.
Sarah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so
Okay.
like I really don't think it's that bad if you decide you want to change like your major when like from your ECAs, because again, like we're teenagers, colleges know that they'll like know that this is the time of our life where we're like figuring things out, and life isn't like a straight path. Like you're gonna change your mind at some point, but I think that if it's during the application process you decide you want to go to a different field, I think you just have to try to like maybe put that into your application a bit. Because if all your accounts are this way, you can try to like segment it by saying like, oh, I was interested in this, but this is like the kind of like thought process that I went through, and it made me basically realize that this is what I want instead. This is why I'm so passionate about it. And you just have to like really, again, sell yourself, like sell your story to them, and your colleges will understand. You just have to find a way to do it smartly. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Last question from the team. Can you build a strong profile despite not having a lot of extracurricular activities, and how? Anyone can go first.
I'd say, yeah, it's very possible because there's a saying that's it's quality over quantity. So let's say you only have 3 or 4 ECs and you only have, let's say, like 14 months left before college applications. What you can do is try to make the most impact with those 3 or 4 ECs. So let's say in high school, I had a hackathon team, which initially, it was just a hackathon team, and I had a few months left before college. And I knew that I had to make the most impact with that. So what I did, I transferred an hackathon team into a startup, sort of like rebranded it. And so with that, I was able to have an impact with joining hackathons and actually applying my projects in different areas. And people were in colleges were able to see that, oh, this kid was able to have an impact with these few extracurriculars. Because it's better to have 3 or 4 really deep ECs rather than 10 really like very shallow ECs. Always aim for depth and not width. because they don't want to see a kid, because they're gonna know you're just lying to get into colleges with like your 10 ECs that were like, just made for that college application. With that, you're able to show them that you're actually passionate about it and that you want to work towards it moving into the future. So I think that's important thing. Depth over width.
Okay, I can go next. So, yeah, similar thoughts. I really think it's better to have quality than quantity. So, even if you have no ECAs like at the moment, I don't really recommend like joining a lot just so you have something to put on your resume, because colleges will know, they'll know that like you joined this org just so that you have something to put on your resume. And when in reality, your org has like no depth, like you're not doing much there. So I really don't recommend just like doing that all to like, for the college to just say like, oh, she's just doing this because like she just needs something to put on her resume. So I think like a really common myth is that like an ECA needs to be like a club or an org or a committee that's like on an official level. But in reality, like an ECA can be almost like anything that you do outside of your classroom. So ECAs are basically any activity or cause that like you like dedicated a considerable amount of time to. So you can talk about like your hobbies, some like routine activities, things you do after school, things you enjoy. For example, in one of my pen essays, I talked about traveling and how seeing like different buildings around the world like got me to know different cultures better, and it basically made me more appreciative of the world. And this basically just tied it back into my dream to be like an architect. So those are like things that you can consider. And I really think that some people don't have that luxury of joining a lot of activities because you have to help out at home or like you need to have a job or something. But colleges also understand that, and that's like a really valid way to spend your time too. So you could try to think about like how maybe you've made an impact on your family, how doing these things had an impact on you, and you just have to discuss these things in your essay, and you need to just like use your capability to be insightful and like reflective during your application.
Okay, Santino, do you have anything to add?
I think they said it best. It's just, quality over quantity. And I think one of the best points that was raised was, even if, you don't have anything, let's say senior year, it's not too late to start, but, it's best to get your foot ahead of others as soon as you can, I'd say. But it's not too late. Just make sure what you end up doing is something that, shows impact at the end of the day, because that's what colleges want to see. They don't want to see for lack of a better term, a dump of things that don't matter.
Okay, thank you so much, Santino, Sarah, and Marcus for your engaging discussion. Before we officially wrap up this session, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session. So we're going to read the question right now in the chat box. Q&A box. We'll start with question from Stacy Lagman. Hello, what kind of extracurriculars do admission officers like? Do they like awards more, or do they prefer involvement in clubs or organizations outside of school?
Okay, I can answer this first. So, like I said earlier, I don't think one ECA is necessarily better than the other. It really depends on like the kind of student profile that you're trying to have. So, for example, if you're like, for example, going into like STEM and you really want to like show like, oh, I've done like research and things like that, then that's like better for your student profile. But for example, other people, they want to have more on like the service organizations and such. There's really no like or ECA that's better than the other. It's really just matters like how you sell it to the like college and how you relate it back to yourself and who you are as a person and what's your like vision for the future.
Do you guys have anything to add?
Nothing from my end. Yeah, that was pretty well said. So
The
Yeah, same here.
next question. Okay, thanks. Next question. From an anonymous attendee, do taking extra courses outside school serve as an extracurricular award?
I would, yeah, I would say yes. But those courses have to be relevant to, again, what you want to do, and not, even if it doesn't align with your long-term goals, it should reflect why you're interested in a specific topic. Yeah, so I'd say that those would really help your application if you take the initiative to take courses outside your regular course of study.
Okay, and then just to add, like for college courses, usually in the application portal, you can already like list down like what courses you've taken outside of your regular studies. So there's already a section for that. So if you want to talk about it during like essays and such, you can do so, but there is a section already allotted for it aside from ECAS. So you can also get like sometimes credit for those when you apply.
I'd say also, yeah, but like if you have other awards that you can put in your award section besides having, courses you took that are college courses, try to put those instead because you can still put, as mentioned by Sarah, in section of the application, courses that you took that are college courses. And try to make sure that the courses you took are actually things that you enjoy learning about and not just because they look good in your application because colleges can like sense that a mile away.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Could we use LinkedIn to find internships even if we're just high school students?
Yes. Short answer, yes. It's just about, connecting with the right people. So my trick to that was there's this page, it's called One Salting, and they give you tips and tricks on how to reach out to people in different industries for, connections, quick chats, and that can eventually lead to internships. Yeah, so I just say try your luck out. Who knows? Even if it doesn't happen, you'll find something in college. But it's always good to see where like doing that could lead. So yeah, I'd say go for it.
I'd say also yes, but like the trap that most young high schoolers fall into, even college students, is that when they try to DM on LinkedIn, the conversation becomes very transactional between two people, and if I'm the older person being asked an internship, sometimes it feels kind of weird because it feels like I'm just giving you something. Instead, what I would suggest is that I was taught in this in college is that try to make it seem like you're asking for mentorship or guidance or like an apprenticeship, because these people would likely want it to guide someone, especially a young person in their career, rather than being in an internship wherein becomes very like transactional. You don't really get to learn anything. And the mentorship can eventually turn into an internship in the future. You actually hit two birds with one stone. You get a mentor, the same time you get a future internship referral from that person.
Okay, sorry, you have anything to add?
No, I think they covered it pretty well.
Okay, thanks. Next question. As a rising senior, had very few ECs. How can I find volunteering or internships or other ECs opportunities in the Philippines founded by Filipinos, such as Kada Career, something like that? Thanks. Anyone can go first.
Okay,
I
I
think,
will go.
yeah,
Okay,
go.
so for volunteering, there's a lot on like Instagram and Facebook, like I mentioned earlier. And that's because a lot of the people who are in orgs are usually like young on like the younger crowd, and they're like usually student led. So a lot of times you can go to like like the organizations in schools. Some of them have like workshops, webinars, or things like that. So for example, I joined Habitat for Humanity by De La Salle before, and that was just like disseminated to my school from De La Salle. So you can rely on Facebook and Instagram a lot for those, especially like hashtags. I remember before when I was looking for volunteering opportunities, I used like hashtag volunteer PH a lot, because usually when people are like recruiting or just like some random volunteer event for like typhoons and such, they'll always use that hashtag to look for people who are willing to like give support. So that's usually like something that you can do also.
For internships, I'd say it's much harder to find those as a high school student, especially in the Philippines, because it's not really that popular. Well, there are internships for high school students, but it's not really that abundant for us. What I'd say is try to find smaller companies or let's say startups, because your goal at this point is growth actually. Like in startups, you get to see how decisions are made, how people work with each other. While if you're in a larger company, you don't really see decisions being made just given that part of a program. You don't really get to learn anything most of the time. But working with like, if you work with founders, let's say one of the things I used was YouTube. I searched startups in the Philippines and it lists down the founders that I wanted to work with and try to shoot them email. Well, most of them turned me down, but that isn't to say that it's a bad way. You never know. So just try to find an industry that you want to work in, try to find a smaller business or startup in it, and just use Google. Actually, sent the website in the chat. You can find most business persons' email on there, their personal, and think both their personal business email are on there.
Okay, thanks.
I have nothing else to add. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think this is mentioned naman earlier. So for volunteering. Okay, next question. Am I too late to boost my college application if I'm just going to apply for stuffs that counts as ECs this grade 12?
I'm not really understanding the question. I think it just goes back to how the other questions were answered. I don't think it's too late. To try your hand at different things, but the sooner you start, the better. So it's not too late, but you should start if you haven't yet, because time's running out.
And I think another part, sorry. I think another part of the application to if you have weaker ECs is that the essay part. That's a really important part because I've known students in my school who didn't really have strong ECs in high school, but they had really great stories to tell in their essays and they're able to connect it to their lesser ECs. So colleges really like that because they were able to showcase their personality and potential moving forward. So it's never too late to actually help boost your application in different aspects because it's not just the ECs, it's your essays and your interviews as well.
Okay, so I think this goes back to the question earlier, like, can you have a strong profile if you don't have any echoes? And I really think that it's not necessarily needed, but it is a really good thing to help boost your application. And there's so many ways that you can approach like the echo section. Again, like if you have just like a hobby that you really like, it's really better to talk about something you're really interested in rather than joining orgs which don't matter to you, which you won't be able to talk about in depth during the application process. Especially if like you're gonna have an interview and like the interviewer asks you about it, you're not going to be able to make up that stuff on the spot. You have to talk about something that's like genuinely interesting to you. And that's basically like what the whole application process is about. It's getting to know you and what you're interested in. So it's better to have something on your application which has substance to you. And because if it has substance to you, it will be meaningful to the college as well.
Okay, thanks. Next question from Stacy Lagman again. Hello again. Which part of the application has the most impact? Is it the essay, your extracurriculars, the SAT score, etc.? Sorry for more than one question.
I think it depends on the school you apply to. If it's a school that, places heavy emphasis on academics, not necessarily in the US, but let's say in Europe, then those count towards, the most for your application. But in the US specifically, especially like liberal arts colleges, I feel like it's the essay and the ECs that show what you're passionate about and how this is reflected in your application. Testing scores, some schools are even test optional now. So like, I don't think that part plays as big of a role as it did in years past. So yeah, but it's again, dependent on each school. So there's really no specific answer.
Okay, yeah. So to add on to that, for like the different countries, so I think it's important to understand like what they're focused on. So for example, Asian countries, they barely ask anything about your extracurriculars. So like they give you like 250 words maximum to talk about your ACAs, especially in Singapore. And then they really care more about your academics, but they don't ask for SAT scores either. In the US, schools are test optional. But personally, I think it's better to take the SAT if you can, because some schools will just like wonder like, oh, why didn't she? Because, again, everything that you add into your application can give you a boost, or it can like not be good to you, but usually things will give you a boost. So some colleges will want to know your SAT score just to have that extra like something in your application. And then for Canada, they don't ask much about ECAS either, but they don't ask for your SAT also. So they focus a lot on your academics. So I really don't think it's important to prioritize one section over the other. It's better to be well-rounded in everything because you know, it's just something that like depending on what schools you're applying to, they have like they're looking for a certain student and you just want your to try your best to fit into that role.
I'd say every part of your application is important, especially if you're coming from a high school that hasn't had a history of like applying to schools abroad. So for example, in my high school, I had to fix my high school profile, everything there. And so what I think is that you need to have polished things in every part of your applications. For example, you want to have a good SAT scores because they might not be familiar with their local high school system. In your SAT scores, you're able to show them your academic potential going into college, that you can handle the academic rigor they have there. With your ECs, you're able to show what you're passionate about, what you enjoy doing. But I think the most important part is having your essays, is because, as I mentioned earlier, it's part of your stories. Because from my experience, there have been students who had amazing awards, amazing ECs, but they had really bad essays, and so they weren't able to get into these really great schools that they wanted to go to. Meanwhile, there were students who had good ECs, good awards, but they had an amazing story to tell. And colleges who are enamored by this and able to hook admissions officers into helping them admit into these colleges. So I think that's really the most important part of the essay, because you get to tell who you are and what you love to colleges.
Okay, and just to like finally add, oh sorry, but you can also check the common data set of each school. So basically that's like a database of like what the school puts most like importance on. So it shows you like what's the usual like student that they look for. So you can literally just Google common data set plus the school that you want, and it will show you like everything that you need to know. Yes.
Okay, actually, next question is for Sarah. About Make a Wish, because I also found out that organization online. When you joined, how was the application process like in order to become a volunteer?
Okay, so I really love Make a Wish because it is really like so accessible for everyone to join. So the application process is literally you fill up a Google form and you're in. Like you're gonna be a volunteer, like just like that. And the minimum requirement is usually that you have to join 1 to 2 wishes every year, and the wish is basically just like granting the wish of the kid. And so for me, I like to join a lot of wishes. So in 1 year, I usually joined like 4 to 5. You don't have to do that, but I think it really is a lot of fun if you do join. But yeah, it's really easy to join. You do pay like a small volunteer fee. I think it was around like 300 pesos when I joined, but then they also give you like a free shirt with it. So you're basically paying for the shirt. And then yeah, it's really a fun org for you guys to join. So I suggest you guys try it if you want to.
Okay, thank you. Next question, how does it look like to colleges when you've been in a publication for 4 years, but for senior year, you feel like it isn't something you're really passionate about already, so you chose to quit? For context, I was supposed to be EIC for my junior year, but I decided to transfer to a different school, and I joined a new publication for grade 11. Yeah, anyone? Sarah, I think you're part of Ecolets. You want to answer this?
Oh, sure. So actually, I also left Ecolets after my second year, I think. So that's basically because I just decided that it wasn't like the right fit for me. So I really do think it's okay if you switch out of that, because sometimes you're just trying to figure out what you're passionate about, and I really get that. So if you switch out, colleges really won't mind. It's just like it just shows if you put on your application that, oh, this was something I was interested at that time, and now it's not really my passion anymore. So colleges will get that, and again, it just adds to like a story about you. So yeah.
Do you guys want to add more, Marcus or Santino? Or
I'm not really familiar with the terms that she was using, so I don't think my input would be beneficial.
okay, how about you, Marcus?
I'd say just try to explain why you did what you did, because there's like an additional information section. So let's say, I mean, in my basketball, because I quit basketball like for a time, was able to like explain why I did it, and I eventually returned to it. So just try to provide context as to did what you did, and don't just try to assume colleges know your reasoning why you did what you did.
All right. So just to add on to that, during my application, how I used it was like in my essay, I said, oh, I joined the Ecolats, and then I realized like there was something else that I was more interested in. So the Ecolats actually helped me like realize that, because in my school's newspaper, I got to like learn a lot about graphic design and such. And so I wanted to apply these skills to like another ECA that I had. So that's basically how like I segued into that part of my application. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Do my ECs need to be related to my chosen major?
It
Okay, I
depends if you
think
switch your major. I feel like that's the answer that, you know, is right, but it should point towards a certain direction that you feel like your life is going to take, is what I'd say. But it doesn't have to relate to your major, because some people do change their major in a month after being in college. So some people go in undeclared, some people end up designing their own major. So yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
okay, yeah. And then for me, I really don't think it matters either, because especially for me, none of my like ECAs were related to architecture, but that's what I'm pursuing in college. Because actually, like in Penn, no one goes in with a chosen major. Like you declare your major after freshman year. But then I really don't think it has to be related, because it matters more about like the skills that you apply. Because for me personally, there aren't very much like architecture related ECAs in the Philippines. A lot of the internships you need to be like completing college already to be like an architecture intern. So a lot of my ECAs were related like service and such, because in the end I thought, oh, that's what I found out I enjoy. So I think it's really just like about finding something that you enjoy, and maybe like trying to develop the skills that will help you towards your chosen major. So that's better.
I'd say it doesn't really matter, because US college is very flexible in switching your major. But during the time you're applying to college, try to have at least one or two ECs related to the major you said on your college application. Because some schools, for example, ask, what's your intended major do you want to pursue? So if you put comp sci, or let's say economics, try to have at least one or two things you did related to that, or things that you did that have skills related to that. It's because colleges just want to see that you have like a certain trajectory you're going to, and not just you're going to be trying to be confused in what you want to do in college.
Okay, next question. I'm already going into my senior year and I feel like my ECs are very varied and not really that strong. If I venture the new ECs for my senior, does it just seem like I'm just joining the org for college applications? If so, how can I mold my application so it doesn't seem that way?
Sorry, can the question be repeated? Or is it in the
Okay,
chat?
so yes, it's in the Q&A box. So someone
Okay.
said they feel like their ECs are very varied and not really that strong. So they venture to new ECs for their senior. That just seem like they're just joining the org for college applications. And if so, how can they mold their application so it doesn't seem that way?
I guess, it really depends on the point of joining those new orgs in your senior year. Are you doing them, to diversify the ECs that you're joining, or are you doing them because you're passionate about, what those orgs actually do, or what those ECs are directed towards? So I guess that's a question you have to answer for yourself, but I'd say that it's okay to have a wide range of ECs. I mean, there's nothing you can do to change what you did in your junior, sophomore, and freshman year, but I'd say that now, given that you said you're trying to venture out into new ECs, try and figure out how to mold that into, a passion of yours. Figure out what skills you can pick up from each of those individual activities that can help you, in college.
Okay, yeah. So kind of the same thing, but then I really think that like you should like first like evaluate the ECAs that already do have. And because a lot of the time like people think that like your ECAs are really varied, your interests don't seem to align, but you just have to find this like common thing that they all have. Because again, like if you've been in these ECAs for like a few years already, I think it will have more substance than something that you do join just for college. Because for example, my ECAs, even though a lot of them are like service related, how can I tie in like theater arts to volunteering for Make-A-Wish and feminism? Like it's a lot of different stuff happening there. But I try to tie it in again by like saying like during these like clubs and organizations, I was in like sort of always put in this role, or like I try to like place myself in a position where I was like leading people, or I was like leading meetings, things like that. So there's really a lot of ways that like you can word it so that your interest, although they're not aligned, it shows like who you are, like the skills that you have and how you contributed towards these orgs and these causes.
I'd say rebranding is a really important thing here. If you have very varied ECs, try to rebrand them in a way which tries to fit a single coherent storyline. Because you're in grade 12 and you have to write for presenting your essays. Another thing is that with your remaining ECs, try to find one or two that you're really passionate about or you're the best in, and try to focus on those two. Try to make them deeper and more and have more impact moving forward, moving towards college application journey. Because you can't turn back time, but what you can do is try to make the most of what you have right now, which is rebranding and having more depth in one or two of them.
Okay, next question. Do you think that applying as a not popular major will improve your chances of getting in? Anyone can answer this.
There are two answers, I guess. The PC answer is no, it won't. All majors are equally as hard to get into, but the real answer is yeah, applying to majors that aren't so popular would help increase your chances of getting into a school. That's why for universities specifically, each individual school now is obligated to release their acceptance rates. So an example would be for UC Berkeley. I know that their business school's acceptance rate for undergrad is much lower compared to the engineering school. And the engineering school is already quite low, which is why once you get into the school, there's a separate application for the business school. So yeah, I'd say applying to majors that aren't so popular could be a way for you to better your chances of getting into the school that you want. But know that if you do end up doing that, you're gonna have to find a way to explain why you want to enter that non-popular major in your application. You can't just say, oh, I'm doing this to get into the school. You have to be like, oh, I'm doing this for these specific reasons. And at the end, like, I feel like once you get your foot in the door, it'll be much easier for you to transfer to a major that you actually want to do. Because internal major transfers are just literally a sign off on a paper. It's not anything like crazy. So yeah, I'd say just if you're gonna go down that route, make sure you have a reason as to why you're doing that, and don't make it because you want to go to that school.
I'd say yeah. Oh, sorry. Because I personally met people in my school and I asked them, what's your major? And they said, oh, this is my major. And it said, why did you want to do that? And he's like, I don't know. I just know it's easier to get into this major. So definitely, yeah. But make sure in your college application, you better explain why you want that major, or you do some things related to that major. And make sure in that school it's easy to switch majors. As mentioned, let's say you want to get into business in Berkeley, but you applied as an English major, so it's be much more difficult to switch. Whereas in other schools, you got into as an English major, but you can easily switch to a business major. So just make sure you're able to explain why you want that major applying to, even though it's less in your own major, and make sure you can actually switch to the major that you want to pursue in that certain college.
Okay, so for me also yes, but I do think you have to be smart about it, because a lot of the times people will apply to like majors that aren't popular, but then they'll have a harder time in college. Like I know some people who applied to, for example, like I think it was like world management or something like that, but then they wanted to transfer into business, which is a different school. But the internal transfer process within the school, because okay, there's like transfer within your school and there's transfer between different schools. Transfer between different schools is usually like a whole new application process, because you need to realize that there's gonna be people who have like the same thought process as you. They're gonna also want to like transfer in the middle of like one semester, and they'll like really make it like a whole new application process. But you're going to be against people who have like who are also in, you know, that academically rigorous school. So that person in the end was not able to transfer, and she got stuck in that major. So you really have to be smart about it. Think about like what the school is looking for, and also like there's a lot of things that goes into the application process, and people realize like schools have like a quota for like certain demographics. They have like sometimes they'll want to like fill up this kind of like club a bit more, so they'll get students who fit into that demographic. So you need to like realize that like it's not always just about the major that you're applying to, but it can help if you apply to a major that's easy to get into.
That was a good
Okay.
question.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Good job to whoever asked that. That's smart thinking.
Yeah, okay. Next question. I think this has been answered earlier. Someone said they've been the same type of ECs ever since they were in grade 7. Is it still best to join other types of ECs now that I'm an incoming senior? But this is answered earlier, right?
I think it was answered, but again, I feel like if the ECs do show that you're passionate about something and you are passionate about that, then it wouldn't make sense to switch or diversify. But if you want to try something new and, you know, pursue something different in college, it's not too late to start. You guys are still seniors. So yeah, I feel like
Mhm.
that's the answer to questions like that.
Next question. I think this is for Marcus. Not sure. If I'm planning to go to college as a CS major and my ECAs don't really have that much CS related since it's mostly UMS related, is that fine? And I'm also currently U12.
Oh yeah, I'd say that's you're in grade 12, so I think that's fine. Because I had the same experience as well. Like going to grade 11, I wanted to pursue CS, but I didn't really have anything related to CS. Like the thing was on my application at the time was journalism and student council, which is very far from CS. So what I did is that I tried to, you can try to rebrand things as you have right now. So CS is a lot of technical thinking, a lot of strategic thinking, a lot of like problem solving. So try to find things in your ECs right now that have those qualities and try to showcase them right now. And I think a lot of colleges really appreciate personal projects that you work on. I think that was a big talking point in my college application was what projects I worked on during high school. Is because you can say, oh, I have a CS club. So what did you do in a CS club? Rather than the person who has CS projects that actually worked on those projects, demonstrated their interests. So I'd say right now, if you're a UM student, you can do online projects in CS, put that in your application. But if you find it really difficult to showcase that you love CS and you feel like your whole application is a different thing, try to apply to the major that you're saying that your EC is related to and switch to CS later on. But if you really want to pursue a CS major in an application, then try to do personal projects because I think that's the most practical. That's the most practical, quickest way you can do right now as a grade 12 student.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another question. How about taking online courses and websites such as edX, Coursera, etc. that count as an EC stinks?
So yeah, it does, because a lot of times I think it depends on what kind of like website or like workshop that you're doing. But then a lot of times they'll give you like certificates that you can play in your resume or that you can input during the like Common App. So again, like similar to like the college courses, there's a part there that you can put your like extra learning outside of like high school. And that's basically where these are gonna go to.
Do you guys have anything to add?
No, I think she mentioned everything. It's just
Okay.
picking which ones. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, did you guys take AP classes or exams or anything similar?
I took IB. Um,
Mhm.
the SAT, ACT. I took GCSEs like pre grade 11 and grade 12, and then yeah, but it was mainly IB for junior and senior year.
Yeah, same. I took IB, then I took the SAT twice. So I took them both in like summer before senior year.
I didn't take any IPAB. I took the SAT, but I applied test optional, so I didn't take any of those. I just stuck to my school's curriculum.
Okay, last question from the Q&A box. What particular ECs do you guys recommend?
I would say ECs that translate to professional experience. And you can, again, get that on the websites that were provided by all of us in the chat. But I'd say that ECs, because you guys are getting older and you are moving into college, it would have been okay if they were, let's say, for passion projects or stuff that you were interested in if you were earlier on in high school. But if you're seniors moving into college, it's better to get a foot in the door and understand what the professional world is like, because that also helps with, once you get into college, the job application process, and then it's a never-ending cycle. So best to get your foot in the door now is my best advice.
Okay, how about Sarah and Marcus?
Okay, so for me personally, I really enjoy like joining organizations, and like this doesn't need to be like service organizations. It can be like anything you're interested in. And I think that like relating back to the professional aspect of it, I think it teaches you to like really work in like a team space, because you're not gonna be working with people within your school. You have to like put yourself into like a new crowd, and you really have to like learn things about like logistics, marketing, communicating, working with like a team, everything. So I think in that aspect it helps you professionally, even though like your cause isn't necessarily directed towards your major or like what profession you want to have after college.
I'd say try to join ECs which you are passionate about, and ECs which you feel like your skills can translate into. You can do more of like exploring passion earlier in your college application journey, grade 9, grade 10. But as you venture into grade 11, grade 12, and you feel like you don't have enough ECs, try to pursue some things you're good in. Because eventually, you'd able to have the most impact in those, be able to have the most experience in those as well. Because you don't want to join ECs just because they look good on paper or they have quantitative impact. You want to join ECs because of the experience. You want to have something to talk about for your college application. And if you don't have something to talk about, then you don't have a story to tell, which is bad for application.
Okay, thank you everyone. That concludes actually our Q&A session. Thank you guys for your active participation. You guys had so many questions, and I hope that our beloved speakers were able to shed light on your curiosities and concerns. But if not, can I ask the speakers to send your contact info for the participants to reach out to you after the session? Is there any way for them to contact you? If yes, can put your contact info in the chat box. If not,
Sure.
just
Does email
okay.
work?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay, for me, I'm gonna drop my Instagram and Facebook. You can just reach me on whichever. I'll probably see it more on Instagram though. And I'm also gonna be joining Camp's mentorship hours, like mentorship office hours, something like that. So if you guys want to like ask me extra questions, you can attend that.
I'll just
Okay,
drop in my email as well.
Okay. So all right, that's okay. That's a wrap actually. On behalf of CAM's 2023 facilitation team, I would like to extend our sincerest gratitude and appreciation to you for sharing with us your valuable insights today and for the productive Q&A session. So we're so grateful for you guys for accepting our panel invitation, and let's give everyone a round of applause for Sarah, Marcus, and Santino. Thank you guys for coming, and I hope this session got you guys excited because we'll be having our next session very soon at 3:30 p.m. See you guys later. Bye. Thank you guys for coming again.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.